So the three panelists that we have with us tonight all appeared in the movie. All three appeared in the film. The first is Mrs. Edith Weiss, who's 93 years old. May she live and be well. She's from an Orthodox family in Hungary, actually today in the Ukraine, a city that was called Salish. Today it's called Vinoradiv in the southwestern Ukraine. She and her older brother survived the war. Her three younger brothers were murdered. After her deportation to Auschwitz, she was sent to a slave labor camp in Latvia, where she laid heavy railroad ties among other backbreaking tasks. After liberation, she eventually made her way to the DP camp in Fahrenwald, which is near Munich. And that's where the Klausenberger Rebbe was, and he was rehabilitating the survivors. She joined the Beis Yaakov that she set up, that the Rebbe set up there, where her teacher was Suri Seidman. The building has been, we'll hear a little bit more about it, but the building was actually rediscovered in Passau, Germany. And at that Beis Yaakov, the Rebbe chose certain serious girls for advanced Jewish studies, and she was one of them. Their teacher was Malka Zahavi, and that was in Passau. It was there in the DP camp that she married her husband, Rav Moshe Weiss, Zichrono Livracha, who had been close with the Rebbe, who actually met the Rebbe and became a chassid of the Rebbe in Auschwitz, in Birkenau. They married. They had the oldest of their children in the camps, the rest of them in the United States, 7 sons, if I'm not mistaken. One of them, a lot of people here have heard of, that's Rav Asher Weiss, is probably the best known of her sons. They made Aliyah in the 1960s to Kiryat Sanz. All 7 of the sons are Rabbanim. One of their sons, Rav Dov Weiss, is a son-in-law, is married to Mindy, who was one of the daughters of the Klausenberger Rebbe. She has dozens of grandchildren and great-grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren. The other 2 panelists are a couple, Dr. Baruch Schmidt, who was in the film as the surgeon in Ladiado. He will be turning 86 this month. He grew up in a non-observant family in Texas. After studying at Harvard, he became a surgeon, made Aliyah with his late wife, Joyce, and their baby. He became a surgeon in Beersheba at Soroka. In 1977, the Rebbe enlisted him to build the Department of Surgery at Laniado Hospital. It was because of that, the Rebbe's interest in Laniado, that Dr. Schmidt had close contacts with the Rebbe and had developed a personal relationship with the Rebbe. And he's going to recount some of his own experiences with the Rebbe, talk a little bit about how the Rebbe was as a person. And Shira Leibowitz Schmidt, grew up in a non-observant home in the 5 towns, back when I guess there were non-observant homes in the 5 towns. She told her Stanford professor that she would miss graduation in June 1967 because she was going to Israel during the 6-Day War to volunteer. And her response was, "That excuse takes the cake for excuses," he replied. She's been in Israel ever since. She married the late Dr. Elchanan Leibovich, which you heard a little bit about in the film, and they had 6 children. In 1994, she married Baruch Schmidt and came to live in Kiryat Sanz, where they continue to live. She has done research on, I got to know Shira, and Shira, by the way, was instrumental in putting this together. I got to know Shira a little bit because we work in similar fields in translation and writing and editing. She does a lot of Holocaust research specifically on survivors, and she writes regularly for Ami magazine. She researched and visited the DP camp in Fahrenwald, where Mrs. Weiss had been and had been encouraged by the Rebbe to resume her studies. So the way that this is going to work, I'm going to, yes, it's recording. How do I change the view here? You know what?
Speaker view.
Yeah, I want to, hang on 1 second. I'm going to switch to a different view here. Yeah. Speaker view, and I'm going to ask the Schmidts and Mrs. Weiss to unmute themselves. And we're going to start with Shira in conversation with Mrs. Weiss. They've known each other for quite some time, and they will be in conversation about her experiences in the DP camps with the Rebbe and after.
Ellie, can you enable me to do screen sharing? How can I do screen sharing from my computer?
Mrs. Schmidt gaat jetzt fragen, Sascha. Mrs. Schmidt gaat dich fragen, Sascha.
Okay, well, maybe we'll do it without the screen sharing. You have the pictures there also? In any case, good evening, Mrs. Weiss. So nice to see you again. I'm just wondering, was your family in Hungary, were they Hasidic because you're so closely associated with the Sanz Hasidim?
Ich gehe der Schale. Ob die Kims von einer chassidische family.
From home we're not Rebunch, not Hasidish. We were called Ashkenazim.
And when were you expelled from your home? How old were you then?
My husband was with the Rebbe in the Shoah all the time.
Uh-huh. And what was, now this, I'm just showing the people a map of where the Rebbe went, just to get everybody on first base. He was from the Sanz dynasty. He was asked to be the Rebbe in Klausenberg in Romania. From there, he was taken to Auschwitz, number 3. From there, they were taken to the Warsaw ghetto to clean up the debris from the previous year's rebellion. From there, there was a death march to Germany. He was in a subcamp of Dachau called the Mildorf, and then he was liberated in that area of southern Germany and taken to Feldafing, and finally, after Eisenhower moved everybody to the DP camp in Fehrenwald. You see that here, number 6 on the map.
I'm sorry, we didn't see the map, Shira. If you could share the map again.
Oh.
We didn't.
Sie waren jetzt der Rebbe's Maslul in der Shoah. Jetzt waren sie der Rebbe's Maslul in der Shoah. In Auschwitz, gegangen, kann Warschau. Alle Tachanot wie der Rebbe sind gegangen in der Shoah. Was man jetzt dort?
Do you see it now?
Yes, we see it now.
You see the map now?
Yes.
The map is on my map.
Klausenberg today is called, the Romanian name for Klausenberg is Cluj. So if you look for Klausenberg on a map, you will not find it, except maybe in Williamsburg or Netanya. But you will find Cluj, C-U-L-J.
The Rebbe lost all 11 of their children, his wife, and all 11 of their children. Do you see this memorial here on the screen? In any case, that 1 year from 1944 till the spring of 1945, when you were liberated, Mrs. Weiss, what was the worst part of the show for you?
What was the worst part of the Shoah?
I was sent to a working group, a working lager, to do heavy work, which is not for women. One place I have to break down long trees on a mountain top in a wood to take with another young girl a saw and saw down 20 meters long trees.
So you were actually logging trees. That's
Always hungry.
pretty
And
tough.
the second working labor, I was putting down the
Railway tracks.
uh,
Railway tracks.
railway
Tracks.
the
Tracks.
railway tracks for trains. Tomorrow, a day later, I was watching how the train is coming, bringing new stuff to work.
Wow.
It's not work for 16-year-old, 15, 16.
What was the first? So then you were liberated, and you went back home. Then you made your way. Why did you go to Fernwald? What made you? What attracted you back to Germany? What made you go back to Germany after you were liberated?
Because we heard there is Yiddishkeit in Germany. There is a Fernwald, there is a Klausenberger Rebbe. So
I'm going to try to show a picture. Do you see this on the screen, in the screen share?
No, we don't see it yet.
Can you show it, Ellie? It's a picture of the girls.
You emailed it to me? I don't, okay. Yeah, let me,
Maybe you'll show the pictures while I talk. Let's see.
okay, let's. Yeah. I'll put that back up in a second. We will.
The picture, I think it's number 4, where you see the girls assembled outside the Beis Yaakov in the Passau, holding a sign that says Beit Yaakov Seminar. And I have an arrow pointing to Edith, to Mrs. Weiss. She was then Edith Abraham.
Okay. Yeah. Let me. Okay, I'm going to scroll through the pictures here.
That's Edith. Maybe just pause at there. That's it. These are the girls, and Edith is in the top row, or second from the right.
So down below.
Yeah, smiling. And what was the best part of the experience in Fernwald and Passau?
That we can learn. I enjoyed learning.
You hadn't had a chance probably to study much before the war. And then we have a picture of Mrs. Weiss at her wedding. Can you show that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, and I think that we also saw this in the film. Can you describe your wedding? What was the wedding like in Fernwald?
We had a dress for 80 girls. One time we made it short, narrow woman. One time we made it loose back. Great.
And what did they? What kind of gift or a package did they give each bride? As I remember, they gave each of you a couple of things to get started in your married life, where your, so to speak, trousseau. Do you remember what was in that package? What did they give you when you got married, when each bride got married?
Es ist mir fragt, wo ist jede Kalle bekommen? Deckel. Umzufangen ihr Leben. Gegeben für jeden einen paar Sachen. Stieber.
Was is this?
Wo ist das Package, ist mir gegeben für jede Kalle.
The Rebbe from Fernwald went to America to talk to all the Yidden and shake them up, give me what you can. We have people in Germany that have nothing, whatever you can send. And bring, they were starting to give. And I get a pair of white shoes, number 42. My legs were 36.
Anyway, it's an important point that it's not in all the stories, but while the Rebbe was in the DP camp in Fernwald, he made at least one trip back to the United States to raise funds and raise awareness about what was going on in the DP camps and religious life in the DP camps and the institutions, the Shira Leibowitz institutions that he had founded there. And then he came back to the DP camps, which is, I can't imagine that would have been an easy thing to do. I'm sorry, pardon my interruption.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. And you told me that he gave each girl, if the girl agreed to cover her hair, of course he wouldn't marry them if they didn't cover their hair. He gave each girl, or he got for the girls a wig, each girl. Can you show that picture of the unusual wigs of the 3 Leibowitz sisters?
Sure. And then I think we are going to,
yeah, we don't see wigs like that today. But this is, just earlier, I want to say, this is significant.
Sisters.
You do in Revolutionary War reenactments. I think we're gonna shift now to Dr. Schmidt. We'd like to hear.
Ellie, I just think it's important to say that the Klausenberger Rebbe, he was machmir. He was stringent with himself. When he remarried his wife, his daughters-in-law, they all wore turbans. But for these girls, maybe even show the picture of the turban, the last picture. He was lean. He knew when to be lenient and when to be strict, and he didn't put his chumras, his stringencies, on other people. So I think that this wig issue is very significant, because This is another one of the girls who got a bracha from the Rebbe. And I'd just like to emphasize, and yeah, this is the turban. You see, the turban is the Rebbe's daughter. And here's Edith and a friend of hers, Fagi. She was in the DP camp together. Fagi's holding her lesson book that she kept from that period.
Wow.
And you see that they wear wigs, but the Rebbe's daughter, with his family, they only wore turbans and a special kind of turban. So this is his genius, that he knew when to relax some of the stringencies that he himself kept. So I think that's a point where we can end.
Yeah, and I think it's in his biographies. It says that even during the war, he did not allow himself. He allowed others to eat non-kosher, to eat whatever they had to eat, just to stay alive, to eat chametz on Pesach, whatever they had to stay alive. But he himself was machmir. There are stories about how he used to collect rainwater in order to wash before eating a little bit of bread. Things that are.
Go get it.
Babes, don't forget
These-
the Yom HaShoah picture, that there are flags in Kiryat Sanz on Yom HaShoah. I think that we have to thank Mrs.
Yes, absolutely.
And maybe
Thank
the
you.
audience has some questions.
Mrs. Weiss.
Oh, it's still there. Go back, it's there. Oh, you want to go here?
Thank you for sharing your experiences with us. Thank you for sharing your family with us. I know that I and others here in this room are incredibly grateful to you for not only for surviving, but for building a family that's mamash letiferes klal Yisrael. So thank you. Thank you. Okay. You don't have to stay on if you don't want. If you can, we're going to hear from Dr. Schmidt now, some of his personal stories.
All right.
You be
All
well.
right.
Surat Tawat.
Amen.
Maybe you want to hear some of Dr. Schmidt's story.
Due to time limitations, I have changed this a little bit. I will tell very few stories. And if you want to hear more later, if there's time, I can add them. But I think with the time limitations that we have, the first thing we should do is start with 3 stories about Yom Kippur. The first you have already heard. That is you heard it in the movie where they read from the book the story of how Lieutenant Birnbaum, who wrote the book, was one of the people who opened the camps, heard the Rebbe speaking on Yom Kippur, saying who's as they reached the confessional, he just poo-pooed it. Who would write this? Who wrote this? That's one side of the Rebbe. He's always going to defend whenever they deserve defense. The second, I was at a time when I was at, I think it was my first Yom Kippur in Kiryat Sanz. About 2,000 people were assembled, and the Rebbe was in the process of reading. No, he was blowing the shofar. It was in the shofar, and all of a sudden, the Rebbe fainted or almost fainted. He collapsed. And they very quickly carried him into a back room where he used to sleep during the high holidays. And I pushed my way forward. By the time I got there, it was about 2 minutes later, 1 or 2 minutes later. The Rebbe was, although he was in the bed, he was already, and he was on oxygen, but he was already waking up and starting to feel good. Within 5 minutes, he was stable, and within 10 minutes, nobody could keep him back. He was going to get out there and continue to daven. I was told that it would be a good idea if I just stayed with him and took his pulse once in a while. So I did. And I was sitting next to the Rebbe. The Rebbe was in another world. He didn't know me or anyone else was there. No matter how many times I'd take his hand and feel the pulse, he was strong, and he would read a passage in the Machzor, and he was going passage by passage, but he would stop, and he would start repeating it once, twice, looking up. Finally, he got the answer that he wanted, and he would go on. Again, he would stop. And this time he would argue. And he'd argue again. Finally, he again was satisfied, and then he would go on again. He was just shut out of the world. Nothing else existed except him, his davening, and whoever he was talking to above. And I'd never seen anything like that before. I'll tell you the truth. The only time in my life I actually did feel the hair on my neck stand up. It turns out, I didn't know this at the time, but the Rebbe always davened that way. He always davened that way. And again, what was he arguing about? Or he was either asking for clarification or usually it was something that was hurting his people unnecessarily. What? Oh, then the third time that something significant happened, it was a few days away from Yom Kippur, but I was called to his house, not by anybody in the family. Somebody who had come to visit him had found him in a very strange state and thought I'd better go over right away. So I did. And I found the Rebbe in a state of complete tension, and but not organized tension, disorganized tension. He would be sitting normally for 1 minute, and then he would be in a nervous state that he was sweating. He couldn't talk to anybody. He couldn't make any sense. He was I didn't know what to make of it, but that's the way he was, and it just went on and on. I couldn't find his pulse, his blood pressure, everything was normal. And I finally sought out the family and told them that I don't know what's wrong with the Rebbe, but on the physical side, I can't worry about him. I just worry about the mental side. And the family it was his wife and the Rebbitzin and one of the Rebbitzins' daughters, one of the Rebbe's daughters. And both of them were just as relaxed as they could be. And they said, oh, don't worry about it. This will pass as soon as Yom Kippur is over. When Ne'ilah comes, he will be back to himself completely. And indeed, that's the way he was. What am I saying is this is the Rebbe. We've seen the Rebbe before arguing for his flock. We've seen the Rebbe arguing about everything. And now we've seen the Rebbe as he is alone with his God on Yom Kippur. All that time, he is afraid. He was like a man who was facing death the next morning. He was afraid because his sins were so terrible. And that's the way he was every year. As soon as he passed, he was back again. That's what I would say about if I had to tell 3 stories that say something about the Rebbe. I'm going to tell 2 more events, one of which is very short, and the other a little bit longer, that show another side of the Rebbe. Back when he was just the Rebbe of Klausenberg, I've seen this written. I didn't witness this myself, but he at one point it was a Shabbos afternoon, and he was walking back to the synagogue to conduct services, and he sees there was a Jewish man, unknown to a stranger, but he was smoking a cigarette, and he passed the Rebbe, and he says, "Good morning, Rebbe. No, good day, Rebbe." And the Rebbe said, "Good. What is that? Is it good Shabbos, Rebbe?" And the Rebbe looks at him and he strikes up a conversation and he says, "What's your name?" The guy was a little taken aback. He told him his name, and he said a few more words, and he starts to put out his cigarette on the on wherever he was, and the Rebbe says, "No, don't put it out. Just throw it away." And so he threw it away, and he says, "I want to invite you. We're having after Shabbat tonight. We're having a Malava Malka at our shul. I want you to come. Yeah, be my guest. You'll get as my guest. Think about it. Come on." Well, the person did think about it. And the person that he'd never seen before, he showed up at that Malva Malka. And the Rebbe said a few more words to him, and he came again and again. In the end, that person was one of the Rebbe's. He had a tafkid as a gabbai in the Rebbe shul. That is the way the Rebbe related to people. He always saw the good side of everyone, if there was a good side. And if I can compare the Rebbe that you may have, if I can compare the Rebbe in the Holocaust, iron will, stubborn, with the Rebbe who treats people like that, it took me years to put them in the same person. How a person can be this tender and this rigid at the same time. And I finally figured it out. It is simply love. Love that you can't imagine the dimension of it. Love for the Creator and love for his creation, man. The Rebbe had it in measure that is unique in its magnitude. That's what I don't know whether I've passed my time limit or not. Can you tell me if I have, Ellie? Do I have any more time, or have I?
I think we have a couple more minutes, but we're gonna. I think it's a good place to wrap up. If you have another short.
Okay, a short one. The well, this is a story of the Rebbe in the camps. In the camps, and there was a special section for the children. They were in a separate dormitory, and every morning, the first thing that the Rebbe did was visit the children's section, who, if you think adults had a hard time, you can imagine what they've gone through. And he would talk to every child, not always on the same day. He'd sit on their bed with them. He would.
This is in the DP camps, or
Yes,
in the
in the DP camps. In the DP camps, yes. And he was like a father to every one of those children, besides the other things that he had to do. But he took it with maximal seriousness. At one point, a man unknown, somebody had the great idea of building a special place in one of the other camps, just for kids with better circumstances than they were able to dredge up for in most of the other camps. They got a fund for this, and he was coming in a certain day to take you boys and girls to this other camp. The day arrived, every single kid in the camp hid. They hid, and they couldn't be found until he left. They were not about to lose their daddy to go off to some other camp. That's one. Have I got any more? I've got stories if you've got time.
Yeah, I know that the stories about the Rebbe can and do fill several books. I can think of several offhand that really connect with the themes that you've explored in your anecdotes. But we do have to stop.
Okay.
So thank you so much, both of you. And especially Shira for helping me helping me and Ariella organize this event. It really, it was very special. Thank you so much. No, Shira's sharing one last screen. You got to unmute. If that's
Unmute.
What about any questions or anything in the chat that you want to bring up?
So there's nothing in the chat, and I think that I would love to continue schmoozing about this stuff, but we have Myrav in a few minutes and a couple of things that we have a tekes, a ceremony. You're welcome to stay on the line during the ceremony, but we're going to move on to that.
Okay.
The Rav of our shoulder, our Mara da Asra, Rav Shlomo Sobel, is going to speak now. Okay, so I'm going to mute you both, and we're going to you can stay on if you'd like, and but we're thank you very much. אני חושב ש... You're lighting the candles, right? Yeah. אז תגיד, כאילו, תעמוד כאן כדי ש...
טוב, שלום לכולם.
אפשר להוריד את
קודם כל אני רוצה להגיד, זה לא זמן לתודות עכשיו, אבל בכל זאת להגיד תודה לאריאלה על כל הארגון של הערב הזה, ולרב אלי על כל ההנחיה ועל כל הדברים שהוספת בין לבין שמאוד העשירו את התוכנית. ואני רק רוצה להגיד דבר אחד, אני ראיתי פעם, כשהייתי ילד קטן, אני לא זוכר, ניסיתי היום לחשוב באיזה גיל זה היה, לא הצלחתי להיזכר, אחרי גיל 50 כבר לא זוכרים דברים טוב, אבל כשהייתי ילד קטן, פעם אבא שלי לקח אותי לרבה מקלויזנבורג, נסענו לנתניה, והיה הפעם היחידה שהיינו שמה, אני כבר לא זוכר אפילו מה הסיבה, אני רק זוכר בתור ילד, אני חושב שהייתי באזור גיל 6 אולי, משהו כזה, אני זוכר בתור ילד שהיה לי חוויה מאוד, מאוד נעימה, כלומר הרבי היה חביב ביותר, כן, עם חיוך, היה לו כזה חיוך גדול, והוא היה חביב ביותר, והוא שאל אותי כל מיני שאלות, זה הביא לי איזה ממתק, וסתם, בתור ילד זה היה לי חוויה מאוד, מאוד מיוחדת. כשגדלתי יותר, כשהייתי בתיכון, וכששמעתי את הסיפורים על החיים המופלאים של הרבי מקלויזנבורג, אז אני זוכר שהדבר שהכי דפס אותי בתור טינאג'ר, ועד היום זה הדבר שהכי דפס אותי, זה בזמנו אני קראתי הרבה, היה איזה שנה, שנתיים, שכל הזמן הייתי קורא דברים על השואה, צטניק וכל מיני ספרים, כל ספר שהיה על השואה קראתי בזמנו. והדבר שהכי הרשים אותי ברבה, זה שהוא היה לו המון, כולנו שמענו דברים בכלל שאנחנו היום רק יכולים לספר עליהם, כשאנחנו מספרים עליהם אנחנו לא באמת מרגישים אותם, אי אפשר בכלל להבין את מה שהרבה עבר בשואה. היה לו הרבה צעקות אל השם, הרבה בכי אל השם, הרבה שאלות אל השם, אבל הוא כל הזמן היה קשור לריבונו של עולם. אותי זה ממש הפליא, כי הרבה פעמים בחיים שלנו יש לנו כל מיני שאלות על הקדוש ברוך הוא, לפעמים יש לנו שאלות, סליחה שאני אומר, האם הוא קיים? יש לנו לפעמים שאלות, למה הוא עושה ככה? הרבה, זה לא היו השאלות שלו, כלומר הוא כל הזמן הרגיש את ריבונו של עולם. אני בטוח שהיה לו מיליון שאלות, אבל הוא חי כל הזמן תחת אשר לא עבד את השם אלוקיך בשמחה, כן, כל היום כשהתכוננתי קצת, אז שמעתי איזו הקלטה שהוא מדבר, איך הוא לא הסכים לאכול אוכל לא כשר בשואה, משהו מופלא, יש שם איזה סיפור מאוד ארוך, לא משנה, והיה לו המון בכי, המון זה, אבל תמיד זה היה מתוך הקשר לריבונו של עולם. אף פעם לא היה סימן שאלה על הקשר. וזה דבר מאוד מאוד מופלא. כמו שאמרו מקודם, הרבי אמר, לעולם לא לשפוט אנשים שעברו את השואה והחליטו חלילה לנתק את הקשר ריבונו של עולם, אבל הרבי עצמו, כל מה שהיה זה כל הזמן היה מתוך קשר. זה דבר מדהים בעיניי, ושבעזרת השם נזכה לקחת משהו קטן מהדבר הזה לחיים שלנו. אז אני אדליק את הנר הראשון רק, ועילוי נשמת כל הקדושים והטהורים והצדיקים שנספו בשואה, ובתוכם גם בני משפחתי.
אנחנו נדליק נרות זיכרון, גם כל מי שפה שיש לו קרובים שנספו, וגם מי שבזום יכול להדליק את המצלמה ולהדליק את הנר מול המצלמה. אולי הוא יעשה את הסף, שיראו את הנרות. אין פה ניצולים, אבל בזום ניצולי שואה וילדים של ניצולי שואה שרוצים לבוא ולהדליק נרות, מוזמנים לבוא ולהדליק. אני בינתיים אדליק את הכל. נכדים ונינים של ניצולים בזום ופה שרוצים להדליק, מוזמנים עכשיו. אפשר לעמוד לשירת אני מאמין בעתיד. אני מאמין, אני מאמין, אני מאמין, באמונה שלמה, בביאת המשיח אני מאמין, בביאת המשיח אני מאמין, תולות הרבע בנימה נפש יהודי עומייה ותפעלו במזרח קדימה עם ציון צופיה עודו עבדה תקוותנו התקווה בשנות 2000 להיות עם חופשי בארצנו ארץ ציון ירושלים להיות עם חופשי בארצנו תודה לכל מי שהגיע, אנחנו נתפלל ערבית, אז נתחלק לעזרות השונות.
Thank you. Hang on, let me turn this off. Bye, everybody.